They are trying to build a fan base in London with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We have that going on right now in London. The Miami Dolphins taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know why they do that to the fans in Jacksonville. They have them with the Jags all the time, a winless team right now. But we have a lot going on today, obviously. So many games that we got to go to. First, I want to begin, Andy and Donnovan, with Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals, because this is a situation where we never like talking about it, obviously, but it is important to talk about. Cliff Kingsbury will not be on the sidelines today for the Arizona Cardinals because of the COVID situation, testing positive. So, Andy, what does this mean for the Cardinals in their game? And Chandler Jones also doesn't look like he's going to play with COVID issues as well. So what does it mean for the Arizona Cardinals as a whole?
Yeah, it looks Chandler Jones, Zach Allen. And it's not just Cliff Kingsbury either, because the quarterback's coach is also out. It's going to be, I believe, the offensive line coach calling plays. And interestingly enough, Jesse, what happened last year, the Browns were in the same situation where their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, had to sit at home and miss a playoff game, which the Browns won and beat the Steelers. The difference being that was known way earlier in the week. Kingsbury just found out about this Friday. So from a fantasy perspective, I think they're going to try to keep things as simple as possible. So I've been getting a lot of questions today on social media about Rondale Moore, Christian Kirk. I think you keep it nice and simple, and it's going to be an even heftier heaping of targets onto DeAndre Hopkins. I just think they break it down really simple today.
Deej, your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals situation? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Great point. Yeah.
Okay, so apparently I might have been muted off the top, so I just want to reestablish and tell everybody to send in your questions, because that is what we are here for. We are helping you with your starts and sits week 6 of the NFL season here on Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook Live. We want to help you out. I don't want to spend too much time on the COVID situation, obviously, but it is important to point out that Damian Williams with the Bears doesn't look like he's going to play, also a COVID situation. So obviously the Bears already without David Montgomery due to injury. Now Damian Williams looking like he's going to be out. And that leaves Khalil Herbert, who did get 18 touches last week, Andy. 18 touches is no slouch anyways. And now with another back out of that backfield, what's the ceiling for a guy like Khalil Herbert today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what do we always say? Opportunity equals success for fantasy football. There's nobody else behind him. So 6th round rookie coming out. Not a lot of fanfare. Not a lot of the general populace knows too much about Khalil Herbert. I think what it does is it's going to be at least in a PPR format. I think that's probably where the benefit is, because the touches will be there. Now, how that's going to equate behind a bad Bears offensive line and just an offense and team really that seems to be in flux, that remains to be seen. That's why I'd fade on him when it comes to standard. But touch-wise, PPR makes a lot of sense, along with the likes of a Devontae Booker and Darrell Williams, who are also filling in as starters today.
Yeah, Deej. So I'm looking at a guy like Khalil Herbert, and I actually picked him up in one of the fantasy pools, and I was surprised by the amount of volume that he was getting out of this backfield. And it just seems like now he looked good. It's not like, Andy mentioned where he was drafted. He was getting balls, and he was running hard, cutting hard. He looked really good for the Bears. And you know that this offense, they dial back what Justin Fields can do. He doesn't throw the ball that often. He's only had around 20 passing attempts per week. So you know that they are going to make a concerted effort to run the ball. So it seems like this is a boom spot for a guy like Khalil Herbert. Yeah.
Oh,
your offense line to help you, set the protections, to identify the Mike linebackers. So, offensively, things might get a little scary in the Windy City.
Okay, staying with running backs, I think it's important to talk about this. So, DJ, me and you spent last week talking about basically two running backs who historically have been RB1s, and that's Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook, both extremely banged up, both expected to play today. Mixon was an interesting case because he didn't practice basically at all last week, and then he comes in, gets a few touches, ends up scoring a touchdown. So sort of a low floor, low ceiling type of day, but he actually ends up doing pretty well. Dalvin Cook also banged up, but he looks like he is going to play despite the fact that they have a bye. Should fantasy owners be rolling out both of these as if they are healthy, or should there be tempered expectations because of the injuries in the past that they're dealing with? Donnovan.
Not necessarily as if they were healthy, because they're not 100% healthy, but should they be starting them? Yes. Listen, in standard fantasy leagues, you have two RB spots and a flex. And so we've heard about some crazy decisions from fantasy owners so far this year where we're thinking, man, like, who are you drafting against? That these are the choices that you have. However, I struggle to imagine that someone has two better running backs plus their third best receiver, theoretically, or second best tight end, or I guess another running back is better than either Mixon or Cook. So whether it's in your two RB spots or in the flex, those guys should be in your lineups this Sunday, and really any Sunday. If they're up and they're going to take the field, you should be starting them. You drafted them in the first round for a reason.
Yeah, with the Mixon situation, so Samaj Pirine also dealing with COVID issues, I believe. So if Mixon is even remotely healthy, it seems like the Bengals are going to force feed him. But Andy, what does the Dalvin Cook situation mean for Alexander Mattison? Because Mattison owners have been beneficiaries of Dalvin Cook's lack of health, so to speak, over the last couple weeks. What do you do with Alexander Mattison knowing that Dalvin Cook is a re-injury risk? Is he worth a start, maybe a dart throw?
right. One last point, too, on Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
Head coach Zach Taylor said that not only is he going to play, he's going to get a full workload. So
Yeah.
that's good news if you're a Mixon owner. On the Madison side, it's tricky because the Vikings go into their bye after this week. So is it a case where they're going to try to temper expectations and maybe like lower the workload for Dalvin Cook and give more to Madison? Or are they like, he's going to have another week to recover and ease off? Madison is approaching, just because Cook has been in and out of the lineup with that ankle injury, and even though he doesn't technically carry an injury designation, we know this point in the season that ankle's not 100%. I think Madison is okay for a flex play if you need it, Again, it all depends on what other options you have. But Madison, I believe, is serviceable in a flex capacity today, even with Dalvin Cook in the lineup.
Okay, so you mentioned it depends on what the options you have. That is a good segue into asking some questions or answering some questions that our viewers have. Marie on Facebook is asking Chuba Hubbard or Darrell Henderson. It is a full PPR league. Chuba Hubbard getting the start again today. Christian McCaffrey yesterday placed on injured reserve. He's going to miss the next 3 games. That is tough because many people were expecting to see McCaffrey back in the lineup today. So, DJ, we'll begin with you. Chuba Hubbard or Darrell Henderson full PPR?
I think even though it's PPR, I think Darrell Henderson is the play here. Going up against a Giants team that offensively is going to struggle. Saquon Barkley also obviously inactive this week. You know, that defense is going to be on the field for a lot of snaps. I expect the Rams to get up big and get up early. And when they're looking to close out ball games, the back that is 7 yards behind Matthew Stafford is not Sony Michel. It's Darrell Henderson. So I think Henderson, just because of the way the game script is going to go.
Andy, same question for you. Chuba Hubbard or Darrell Henderson? We've seen what Darrell Henderson is. He seems like a high ceiling RB1 right now in this Rams offense, but is it enough to start him over Chuba Hubbard?
Yeah, the floor is raising for Darrell Henderson. Absolutely. It's coming up. I think it's safe to say Sony Michel should not be a concern if you are a Henderson owner at this point. They got a touchdown last week, but overall not a concern. I think this Marie is in a great situation either way. Personally, I'm going to give a slight edge to Hubbard. The reason being, he doesn't necessarily have that bit of a vulture behind him in Sony Michel, who, again, I'm not saying you worry about it, but Chuba Hubbard popped last week, finally. Looks like he's worked into the lineup. He knows McCaffrey's not coming back. I think this is a nice day versus a Vikings defense that has been gashed against the run at times this year. So I'll give a slight edge to Hubbard.
It just seems like this is one of the Christian McCaffrey injury is one of those things that sort of tips the scales in fantasy leagues. So say you are an owner of Christian McCaffrey. He's hurt and you're expecting him to come back and he's hurt again and you don't have Chuba Hubbard. That can leave you in dire straits with your running back position. But then there's somebody else out there profiting because they have Chuba Hubbard. So that is a massive swing when it comes to the running back situation in fantasy. Deej, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, well, I mean, to add to that, it's not just that McCaffrey's hurt; it's that he's in some ways teasing you, and I don't mean him personally. But if you got him, stashed in your IR, fine, all right, I'll deal with it, and I'll figure out my running back situation until he comes back. But the fact that he's come off the IR and has been questionable, and that handcuffs you in terms of what are you going to do? Is he going to be up? Obviously not, because he's now back on the IR, so he's down now for another 3 weeks. But you have to make decisions on dropping a player, holding him throughout the week, not sure if he's going to be up and going. Obviously, we see not only is he not playing, not last week, not this week, he won't be playing for the foreseeable future. And so it really hampers you in terms of what you can do because it's tough to really predict. And hamstrings are kind of funny like that where you never really know when they're going to be right. But I think that's the toughest piece. You could have played it correctly and had Chuba and handcuffed him with McCaffrey. And then once your hands are tied because you can't make any sort of moves until you move McCaffrey out of that IR spot when he's quote unquote questionable. Many people may have dropped Chuba. And guess what?
Yeah.
They would have to wait in line to get him back.
Yep.
These are the things that make fantasy football players pull their hair out, no question. From Chuba to Chubb, Nick Chubb out of the lineup today, calf injury. Guy. And that means Kareem Hunt is in a very good spot. Andy, I know that the Browns have said that he's going to be on some sort of touch limit, but we'll see what happens in the game and whether they actually stick to that. It seems like Kareem Hunt is in a prime spot here, no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Now he's got wrist and knee. Not injuries, more of a general soreness type of thing. Yeah. He's not 100%. So the coach said, quote, "I'm not going to kill Kareem today with work." Right. So, but the thing is, he's been so dynamic. He's so powerful. He gets into such a groove and momentum that it's hard to stop him once he gets in the game. Now, I'll tell you guys this too. The backups are Ernest Johnson and Demetric Felton. Now, the rookie Felton, for your DraftKings play as a cheap flex and I'm not advising if you have other choices, but as a desperation flex play today in PPR, Felton has flashed big time. He had a 20-plus yard touchdown run earlier in the year, a couple weeks ago. He's quick and fast. And by that, I mean he'll break your ankles with footwork, and he can take it away. Without Chubb, and to change up the pace, it'll be Felton likely on those passing downs potentially, or he's been slid out as well as a receiver into the slot. There's a lot of different ways to use him. So Demetric Felton, if you're really struggling for a running back, that's somebody you can get into your lineup.
No question. Okay, moving on to good questions that we have here, and I'm going to provide some good answers. So Mike on YouTube says, half PPR league, Emmanuel Sanders or Hunter Renfrow as a flex. Andy, Emmanuel Sanders. I know some things were expected of Emmanuel Sanders, but right now in this offense, they get near the red zone. Josh Allen's looking some kind of way, and that's directly at Emmanuel Sanders.
Question specifically, without a shadow of a doubt, you're going Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah.
He's played better. Guys, let's wrap our heads around this. Fantasy-wise, he's outperformed Stephon Diggs. That's a fact. That's right there. Yeah. He has done phenomenally well. His value going into the year was in that flex category, or WR3, if that's how your league was set up. Right now, you put him as a rock-solid WR2 with the potential to hop up into that true starting wide receiver spot. He has been absolutely great. He's also facing, folks, remember, the Tennessee Titans Monday night, who have given up the most fantasy point combination. That formula seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, Deej, I have Stephon Diggs in one of my leagues. I think I took him in the first round. And it's not like he's been bad, right, Andy? He hasn't been bad, but he just hasn't been a beneficiary of some big moments and a lot of scores, because that is what happens when you have an offense that has as many weapons as the Buffalo Bills offense has right now, and you have a quarterback too with rushing ability. So the Bills are spreading it around, but in Mike's specific case, are you with Andy? Are you going to Emmanuel Sanders over Hunter Renfrow as a flex?
Yep, set him and forget him. He's a guy that you have to play out, if not flexed, in one of your wide receiver spots, depending on if you have 2 or 3. And to your point about Diggs, he hasn't been bad, and he's someone who you still have to play because he's liable to go off for 2, 3 touchdowns in a day and potentially help you win your week. But they've been more committed and diligent early in football games to run the football. That's one thing. So they've been better balanced under Brian Daboll this year. Came in fourth quarter, so that's impacted him as well. And 2 words for you, Dawson Knox, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just that Emmanuel Sanders is taking some targets away from Diggs. Dawson Knox has been a real threat, not just over the middle, in the vertical passing game. So I think that's why we're not seeing the same production from Diggs. Diggs was the best wide receiver in fantasy a year ago, and we didn't necessarily expect that. I don't expect him to stay at this level throughout the year. I think he'll settle right in between the middle.
Yeah, it feels like it's coming. It's a matter of time for Stephon Diggs. The Bills are too good. He's too good. That offense scores too many points for him to be a middling is what I'll call him right now, just based on where you probably selected him in your fantasy football draft. Okay, Albert on YouTube, good question here. Dalton Schultz or TJ Hawkinson? Now, Andy, at the beginning of the year or week 2 or week 3, if I would have posed this question to you, it would have been Hawkinson, obviously.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm not so sure that's the case anymore.
Jesse, you're right. Would have been silly. Would have been like, don't even ask the question. But no, you're absolutely right. And a lot of that is that TJ Hawkinson has not been healthy and is still not healthy over the last few weeks. Nice start to the season, got banged up, and has come back down. And also opposing defenses realize there's not a lot of other choices for Jared Goff to throw to that he's comfortable with. So now we go to Dalton Schultz in Dallas. And remember, it was Blake Jarwin before he got injured, and he was the guy, and Schultz was sort of the fill-in. Well, Jarwin's on the field enough. He's there, but it's Schultz who is getting the attention of Dak Prescott. So without a shadow of a doubt to me, you go with Dalton Schultz today. Absolutely.
Yeah, you in agreement there, Deej? I know you're sporting that sweater right now, sweatshirt or hoodie. Cowboys, that star, looking right back at us. So you going Dalton Schultz?
I am. And, the Cowboys offense has been outstanding. And aside from Dak Prescott, the most dependable thing you know about it week in and week out, is Dalton Schultz is going to give you double-digit points and is going to be a red zone target. Every week, you're not sure. Is this going to be a Amari Cooper day or a CeeDee Lamb day? Is Tony Pollard going to go off, or is Zeke going to get most of the carries in that backfield? And even though Blake Jarwin is a really good football player, that Dalton Schultz is going to be productive. His ceiling might not be as high as some of those other playmakers on that offense, but he's been so dependable. And so, yeah, I think Schultz is the guy over Hockenson. Better offense is going to be on the field just as much. I like Schultz in comparison to the two, but both good options.
I want to stay with the Cowboys for just a second. First of all, from a fan perspective, how much fun are you having watching this offense cook? Because it doesn't matter if it's a running play or a passing play. Like, there is boom ability pretty much any time they snap the ball. Looking at Zeke and Pollard and the efficiency with which they are running. I mean, how much fun are you having as a fan right now?
It's fun. And to be honest, it was like this to start last year before Dak got hurt. They turned the ball over a bit more last year, which was problematic, but they were on pace to set records offensively. I think the biggest difference, Freudian slip for me before I could even get to the point, is their defense. Their defense is giving them the ball back, giving them short fields, giving them layups in terms of putting points on the board. But yeah, they're so multiple. Dak Prescott is basically, calling the game from the line of scrimmage, a la, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady in their prime. So I mean, listen, I say this now, and at 4:25 Eastern, they're going to go out and they're going to play a terrible football game. But thus far, they've been a more balanced version of the Kansas City Chiefs, quite frankly, a more disciplined version of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'll say it's super early, but in the MVP conversation, we're certainly talking about Herbert, and Josh Allen put himself in that conversation. And the numbers Murray is on pace to put up is crazy, and that probably the most valuable football player is probably Lamar Jackson. But don't be surprised if Dak Prescott puts his name in that conversation if this Cowboys team continues to win.
I don't think there's any question about that. Andy, I want to get your take on Tony Pollard, because it seems like with every week there is a greater and greater expectation of what he can do. He's getting sort of a floor around 10 touches a game. That waffles a little bit week to week. But is it getting to the point now where we're into the buys? We're into the buys situation in fantasy. Is it getting to a point where Tony Pollard can step into that RB2 or flex spot for fantasy owners out there?
RB2 is a bit rich for me. Flex, potentially. And we've seen the differences. We've seen Zeke's workload and success grow as the season's gone on, right? We've seen that from that slow start. We've seen him pop a few times now, which is important. So overall, I still feel that Pollard is more of that really high-end handcuff type with some serviceability as a flex. Is it my first choice to do it? No, but like you said, Jesse, when it comes to bye weeks, there are in certain matchups and cases that you at least know he's going to get, around that 7 to 10 touch mark with the potential to bust one open. So I'll put him as I don't necessarily love him as a flex, but I can understand if you need to get him in there, it's certainly not the worst option.
Yeah, DJ, it's getting to a point where because of running back injuries and buys, it's getting pretty thin in the running back landscape. Would you feel comfortable putting Tony Pollard in, as Andy says, more of a flex role as opposed to an RB2?
I would, specifically if we're talking about PPR, even a half PPR league, because he is someone who's comfortable catching the ball out of the backfield. He hasn't been prolific in it yet, but they have had him on the field with Zeke, lined up in the slot as a wide receiver, running, the full route tree. So in those scenarios, I think a flex is a good spot for him, if you don't have a better option on your team.
Awesome. Okay. Rolling on with questions here. AJ on YouTube is asking, need a QB to stream? Ready for these options? Mac Jones, Davis Mills, or Justin Fields?
Oh.
This is incredibly interesting. Just based on the way that they were advertised coming into the league, this is a no-brainer, right? You're obviously starting Justin Fields because of his rushing ability. But we haven't seen any of that while he's been under center for the Chicago Bears. So, Andy, what does AJ do in this situation?
Oh man, AJ, I think you're taking the L this week, bro. Sorry. I think that's how it's going to play out for you. But to be fair to the question, listen, this is not Justin Fields' fault. This is not his fault at all. This is Matt Nagy, who's going to be fired if not before the end of the season, at the end of the year. And hopefully you can still salvage what Justin Fields can do, because he's going to be a heck of a quarterback in this league in the right system. I would advise, first of all, go back to the waiver wire and have a look. Sam Darnold is owned in just about 57% of Yahoo leagues. Like, he's widely available. You know, a lot of people, Derek Carr is still there. I hope there are some better options. If there is not, I would say Davis Mills. And I hate to say that because I do not like Davis Mills as a NFL quarterback, but I believe out of the bunch, at least we see him coming off of a garbage time situation where he was able to produce. And so that's where I think you do it against the Colts. It's probably not going to be a great day, but if I'm looking at the most upside from a garbage point, I'll go with David Mills.
I mean, that's amazing to me to just think of where we were just last week or the week before going in and how Davis Mills had been playing. But Andy, I mean, to Davis Mills' credit, very good game, very good performance last week against the New England Patriots. So TJ, help AJ out. We heard Andy's take. Who you going with, Mac Jones, Davis Mills, or Justin Fields?
Yeah, I mean, I this is tough. I'm gonna take Mac Jones out of the conversation to start, just because I think he's going up against the best defense, and it's not just because I'm wearing a Cowboys hoodie. They lead the league in interceptions with 10. Diggs leads the league for a player with interceptions with 6. So Mac Jones has been pretty good with the football, but he doesn't yet have the skill position talent around him to go win consistently. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Mac Jones out. So now we're stuck with Mills, as another viable option. And yes, he did throw for 300 against the Patriots, which is outstanding for rookie. But the 3 weeks prior, 87 against Buffalo, 168 against Carolina, 102 against Cleveland. And yes, all good defenses, but not great. I don't think the Colts defense, although their team speed is high, is that good. But I still, if I'm just streaming for 1 week, I'm not comfortable putting him in that spot, especially when he's not giving you much in the running game. So process of elimination lands me with Fields.
Yeah, I'm going to split the tie. I think I'm going to go with Fields too. But the reason I'm hesitant to do it is because I understand what the game plan. I've been watching these games. I understand what the game planning has been like. They've won by running the ball. And despite the fact that they only have Khalil Herbert today, I don't think they're going to go away from running the ball. However, at the same time, I think the boom potential is there for Fields if maybe there's some pressure and he scrambles. He has that ability to go vertical to guys like Darnell Mooney, and we haven't seen it with Robinson yet, but the potential is there. I just think from a talent perspective, I would go with Fields, but good luck, AJ, because that is difficult to choose. Okay, Bill on Twitter is asking who to flex: Michael Pittman, Naheem Hines, Damian Harris, or A-Rob, as we were just talking about, Allen Robinson. Half PPR league. So again, Andy, Pittman, Hines, Damian Harris, or A-Rob. Choosing one here.
Got to go with Pittman. Allen Robinson hasn't done it. Again, I don't blame any player on the Chicago Bears. I don't blame any player. It is not your fault, Chicago Bear players. It's Matt Nagy's fault. So I'm not going to touch them because we haven't seen it, and there's no confidence that I have that they will figure this out. So I'm not going to do it. Michael Pittman has proven, while not maybe as we had hoped for coming out of the draft as a real dynamic fantasy producer, we've seen a pretty solid floor for him. And it's a good, with Carson Wentz coming back 400-plus yard game last week, his first. We saw that connection again. And with Wentz back and healthy, I think they build off it. I also really like Zach Pascal as a cheap like DraftKings streamer. I think Pascal actually could have the better week out of the two. But out of that group, I'll go with Pittman based on matchup against the Texans and based on the growing chemistry between him and Wentz.
Yeah, I think it was a really encouraging performance from Carson Wentz, something that we hadn't seen. People sort of left him, decided to leave him out on the waiver wire, but Carson Wentz is a guy who has a bit of a track record. And a couple of years ago, he was in the MVP conversation. So if him and Pittman can establish this chemistry, like you're saying, then I think the Colts are sneaky here, like in a division that is clearly not very good. They have a good defense. Wentz starting to play a little bit better. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor doing great things out of the Colts backfield. I think they're sneaky. But back to Bill's question, DJ, are you agreeing with Andy going with Michael Pittman of these four choices?
Totally agree. He's giving you double-digit fantasy points in 3 of 5 weeks this year. It's coming off his best week of the year. He's trending in the right direction, and specifically when Wentz has been healthy, they have had a good connection. So I think Pittman is the easy choice.
Okay, there's two questions here that I want to get to just so I can help whoever is asking these questions. They're quick and easy, so I just want to get your agreement once I give the answer. Glenn on Facebook is asking Madison or Hunt PPR. It's Hunt. Nod your head if you agree. Not even a question. Dalvin Cook will be playing, so that's Hunt there. David on YouTube, DeAndre Swift or JD McKissick. It is a full PPR. But that's got to be DeAndre Swift also. He's a plug-and-play RB1, in my opinion. I don't think there's really much of a conversation here when you have Antonio Gibson also running for the Washington football team. So in agreement, Swift for that one? Okay, good. So we helped. Those I thought were two pretty easy ones, so get those out of the way. Now moving on to more difficult questions. Marcus on YouTube. T. Higgins, Tyler Lockett, CeeDee Lamb, or Sterling Shepard back for the Giants today. Start 2. T. Higgins, Tyler Lockett, CeeDee Lamb, and Sterling Shepard. And there's a little bit of an eyebrow raise for this one just because Lockett's ceiling is much different now with Geno Smith taking the snaps in Seattle. Russell Wilson obviously out for at least, I think, a month. He's targeting a November 14th return date from that finger issue. We'll see if that happens. But Higgins, Lockett, Lamb, or Shepard start 2. DJ, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Lockett's ceiling. I think it's quite easy. For me, it's Lockett and Lamb, the two L's. Geno Smith physically has all the tools. It's never been in question. So there aren't going to be throws that Russell Wilson could make that Geno Smith can't make. I also think because, one, Russell helped him a little bit in the running game, but specifically, that backfield in Seattle is so banged up. I think Seattle's going to come out throwing, coming off the bus throwing, and that's how they're going to produce offensively. So I'm not as concerned as you might think about Lockett's production without Wilson in the lineup because of what's going on in Seattle. And I think Lamb is just by far the best player of this group. Hasn't had necessarily the start to the year that some expected after he crushed Hard Knocks, but the route and the ball that we saw last week between him and Dak were just next level. So you got to start Lamb every week.
Andy, are you in agreement with DJ? Or are you going a different direction?
I'm gonna say no on Lockett. I just don't trust Geno. I understand what DJ's saying. I would rather take my chances with Lamb for sure. Like you said, it's best player out of the group. And then T. Higgins. You're going up against a Lions defense and a Lions team overall that just isn't good. Jamar Chase has really established himself as the alpha in that group earlier than I thought. I thought Chase maybe would have overtaken Higgins a little bit later in the year, but he's really jumped up. Still, though, this offense throws and it throws some more. It is super pass heavy under Zach Taylor, so I think there should be enough ball. I'll go Higgins and Lamb there. Shepard, if he was a week back after injury, I'd like it. This was like yesterday afternoon he was taken off the injured list, so I'm not trusting he's 100% there.
Okay, I want to stick with that Seahawks-Steelers game for a sec, if you guys don't mind, because obviously we have the Russell Wilson, Geno Smith situation, but also Chris Carson being placed on the injured reserve will miss at least the next 3 games. Alex Collins stepped into Carson's role last week, didn't do very much. So what can we expect from Alex Collins? Is he more of a flex touchdown-dependent type of guy, if only because Geno Smith's inability to stretch the field like Russell Wilson should allow the Steelers and opponents in the future to stack the box a little bit more against Alex Collins. Andy, your thoughts?
Yeah, the Steelers' offense is no good, really, but the defense is great. And the defense is what they're built on, and they are going to know this information that we're talking about here, right? They're going to try to make Geno Smith beat them. And that's the right strategy. Dude hasn't started since, 2017? And didn't have any – now, again, he's with the Jets, so how much success do you really expect that he was going to have?
Right.
But with Alex Collins, it's a case where, okay, it always comes down to what are your other options? At least you know if they're going to hand off the football, it's going to be to Alex Collins. That's a play. What he does with that remains to be seen. But at least you know it is not some weird New England Patriot 2, 3, 4 man committee. You at least know he's going to get the ball. So I'll say try not to start him. But if you have to, compared to a guy who's in a committee, I would much rather him than, let's say, a Kenyon Drake with the Raiders, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal point. So much of fantasy comes down to workload, and there aren't really any questions. You have DJ Dallas there, and I just don't see the threat, like you said, for Alex Collins' touches in that Seattle backfield. DJ, would you be hesitant to start Alex Collins just based on what can be expected of the Seattle Seahawks offense today against a good Steelers D, like Andy said?
Yeah, I think the balance is I'm happy to put in a little bit of money and get him off the waiver wire if it's a fab
Mm-hmm.
league. I'm hesitant to actually start him. I would love to add him to the team and see, Penny in Seattle is still on IR, so theoretically, he may have a couple weeks of getting, a decent amount of carries, but I don't think you're starting him yet until you've seen one, that he's
Right.
going to get a decent workload, and two, that offensive line is able to fire off the ball and redefine the line of scrimmage, give any back, no matter who it is, an opportunity to run the ball consistently. A lot of Chris Carson's productivity is one, that he was on the field when healthy, and two, that even when that offensive line didn't block appreciably well, he's so big, he just falls forward, he's giving you 3 or 4 yards right there. So that's not necessarily the case with Collins. So if you've grabbed him, feel good about it, but don't start him just yet.
Yeah, you got to feel for Chris Carson. Seems like every year the guy is dealing with injury concerns, and it's tough because when he's on the field, he's definitely productive, but he hasn't been on the field as much as Seahawks fans and whoever grabbed him in fantasy would like. So get well soon, Chris Carson. 2 good wide receiver questions I want to get to here. Jay's on YouTube is asking Courtland Sutton or Michael Pittman PPR. Now, Andy, I know we already discussed the glory that is Michael Pittman in recent weeks, thanks to the resurgence of Carson Wentz. But Jerry Jeudy still going to need another week to recover for the Denver Broncos, and that means Courtland Sutton is going to continue to eat for the Broncos. So this is a good question. You going Sutton or Pittman here? Full PPR.
I like the upside of Sutton more. It's just the fantasy ceiling is much higher for him. The Pittman floor might be safer, but I just feel with Teddy Bridgewater under center for the Broncos, we have seen this year, he has made the pieces around him extremely fantasy relevant. He can distribute the football. I think there's room in your lineup, maybe more for DFS, but for Sutton and Tim Patrick, I think there's room for both. So I would say Sutton over Pittman in this case. And it'll be interesting to see how the Raiders respond because, guys, I don't know about you, but with the whole Gruden fallout, I see this going one of two ways. Either they band together and they come out blazing, or it's just too much and they wilt. I don't see there being an in-between, so I'm going to gamble on the Broncos being able to overtake the distraction that's befuddled the Raiders so far.
Yeah, DJ, Sutton or Pittman, full PPR.
Yeah, I agree that the Raiders' reaction is going to go one of two ways drastically, which is why I want to stay away because I have no idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah. I like when the two of you disagree from time to time because it just proves that the questions that we're getting are good because you both really know what you're talking about. And these are obviously very difficult decisions that fantasy owners have to make because Sutton and Pittman are two very, very good wide receivers. You can't really go wrong either way. But
His internet. I say, no, that's enough of you. Bye. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. So
you have that power. You just click a button on the screen.
100%.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
My take was too hot. Too hot.
Welcome back
for the
Andy.
internet.
Welcome back. Let's get to that second wide receiver question that I was talking about. Tate on YouTube. This is a full PPR. This one's good. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, or Deontay Johnson start 2. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson. Obviously, Deontay might benefit from Juju Smith's season-ending shoulder injury. Juju had surgery. He is done for the year. So that leaves the Steelers a little bit more thin at the receiver position. So start 2, DJ. We'll begin with you. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, or Deontay Johnson?
I'm going to take Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I'm going to take the Chargers teammates, and really, I'm essentially just going to take Justin Herbert through the air is what I'm going to take. And against a Ravens defense that, is okay, but certainly from a secondary perspective is not what they once were in their heyday. I got a little bit of concern with Mike Williams because he's been dealing with a knee issue. He obviously will be active, which is why this is a question. I do like Deontay specifically with Juju down, but I just think that is even more targets for Canadian Chase Claypool at the end of the day, and specifically in the red zone. So I'm going to take the 2 teammates. Something that I love to do when given the opportunity is handcuff teammates that are offensive targets, specifically receivers. Just knowing that it's all going to come out in the wash. Maybe one guy has a massive day, maybe one guy doesn't. Maybe they both have a balanced day. But either way, I don't really care. I just want the points. And so I love when people try and handcuff Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, or in this case, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. So I would take those 2 guys and feel pretty good about it.
Well, Tate's going to have a blast watching the Chargers if he decides to go with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Andy, are you
also
in agreement?
You can just watch one game, basically.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just stack the Chargers. Same question for you, Andy. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson. Please start 2.
Well, the Chargers proved anytime they touch the football, they can score, and usually do. So I like the stack option. However, I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson because without Juju, especially in PPR, out of the slot, Big Ben's arm can't throw more than 5 yards, kids. That's it. He's going to dink and dunk his way to Deontay Johnson. He's proven he's been doing it all year. I think he's going to keep doing it. So I'll say Johnson. And I'll go with Keenan Allen in this one because Mike Williams has been hotter. And with that knee issue, I think maybe that's the guy the Ravens try to take away. Maybe Allen can sneak in the back door and benefit a little bit more. But I think either way, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, those are 3 really, really good options. Okay, Trent on Facebook says, good morning. Good morning, Trent. Getting close to the afternoon here. I'm creeping up towards noon. Half PPR, Emmanuel Sanders or Chuba Hubbard flex. We've discussed both players at length today, but this is kind of a nice way to put a wrap on both. Emmanuel Sanders or Chuba Hubbard in a flex. He does say that his lineup running backs are Zeke and DeAndre Swift, who are both going to play, and Adams and McLaurin. So obviously they're playing as well. So he's looking for a flex in half PPR. Sanders or Hubbard. Andy, I'll go to you.
I think you go with Emmanuel Sanders. And again, I go back to the reason being that the Tennessee Titans have given up the most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Not second, not third, the most. And they've seen not themselves, not the usual Mike Vrabel style of team this year for whatever reason. So I think you go Sanders. Again, in that case, I believe Chuba Hubbard's going to have a great day as well. But I just feel the connection and the way that offense is running and clicking and consistently with Emmanuel Sanders, I'll go that route.
I agree. I think specifically in PPR, half PPR, Emmanuel Sanders is a little less touchdown dependent than Chuba would be. So I like Emmanuel Sanders. You're going to get some great production from the 2 running backs that you mentioned. So you'll feel good about putting Emmanuel Sanders in that flex spot.
Okay, SB Cole 75 on YouTube. Good morning. Good morning. Everyone's wishing us good morning. I love it. Full PPR, need a flex. D. Williams, I'm assuming that is Darrell Williams. Javonte Williams, Booker, which is Devontae Booker, or Odell Beckham Jr. Need one of those. So Williams, Javonte Williams, Devontae Booker, who is stepping in the Giants backfield in place of Saquon Barkley, who's not going to play, or Odell Beckham Jr., who has absolutely been a disappointment so far for the Cleveland Browns? Donnovan, begin with you.
Oh, I mean, like
You made him shimmy in his seat. SP, you made him move.
I mean, are you gonna have me live on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, wherever we are, wherever you're watching us from YouTube? Say I'm gonna have you play Devontae Booker over Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, that just
Let's
sounds
go.
ridiculous, but I think I am. Like, I mean, again, Andy mentioned it about a situation where someone is going to get the carries, and I'm not so certain for how many snaps that Giants offense is going to be on the field. But I do know when they are, Devontae Booker is going to be either standing beside in the shotgun or 7 yards behind center. So I'm gonna say Booker, and I'm gonna pray for you is what I'm gonna do. Because I don't feel great about it.
Thoughts and
Doesn't
prayers.
feel great about it, but he's going with Booker anyway. Andy.
Yeah, Odell Beckham Jr., guys, we have to wrap our heads around this. Isn't that Thanksgiving catch day with the Giants, Odell Beckham Jr.? It's just not. For whatever reason, it's not working, and he isn't getting the volume, the touches, the production. I'm saying Odell Beckham Jr., I think you can find better options off of waivers. Truly. Look at the shirt. No one wants him to be better than me, okay? I want Odell Beckham Jr. to be a star. He's just not. He's not in real life a star, and he's not in fantasy a star right now on this Cleveland offense. Now, out of that group, Javonte Williams, I'm scrapping right there because Melvin Gordon is going to play coming off the hip issue. Williams will be, I think, the better play. But Darrell Williams versus Devontae Booker. Remember that Rams offense and a guy, Aaron Donald, who's going to be pressuring and quick. So what does that mean? Well, if Daniel Jones wants to live through the afternoon, he's going to want to get the ball out of his hand. And that could go to Devontae Booker, who had a receiving and rushing touchdown last week. So I think you go Booker here.
Yeah, I mean, they spent a lot of money to bring him in as a backup to Saquon Barkley, perhaps anticipating that Saquon would get banged up from time to time. That has been his MO while he's been in the NFL so far. So big spot today for Devontae Booker, no doubt. And there is a ton of credibility coming from your side of the screen there, Andy, with the Browns banner and the Browns T-shirt polo on. I mean, it's a very good point. If you are saying that Odell Beckham Jr. ain't it right now, then who better to hear from than you?
Yeah, I want to be wrong, guys. Again, I want to be wrong, but I'm not.
Yeah.
The other thing to remember is Devontae Booker, not your average backup running back that's being thrust into a situation mid-October. This is a guy who throughout the OTAs, minicamp, training camp was getting the majority of the first team reps. So he's incredibly comfortable in that offense because they were, bringing Saquon along extremely carefully. So he'll be in a position, if they're on the field enough, to be successful.
Okay, Mike on YouTube is asking Dalton Schultz or Tyler Higby. We already discussed Schultz as it related to TJ Hawkinson, and it seems like Higby's just maybe a touch further down on the rankings than TJ Hawkinson would be. So I'm assuming that Dalton Schultz is going to be the answer here for both of you as it pertains to Mike's question. Agreed? Andy, nodding your head. DJ?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew on YouTube, Kadarius Toney or Tony Pollard PPR flex. Now, a reminder that it does appear Sterling Shepard will be back in the lineup for the Giants today. Daniel Jones, though, we saw the brutal video of him dealing with his concussion symptoms on the field last week, but he is, I believe, going to play for the Giants too. So are we going Tony or Tony in PPR flex? D, to start with you.
Your segues and throws today. I am going to go with Tony Pollard, and here's why. Yes, Kadarius Toney had a great week last week against the Cowboys. I mean, he was going for a Gordie Howe hat trick, getting a fight, throwing out of the game, getting a touchdown. I'm going with Tony Pollard for a couple of reasons. I think Dallas is going to be, pretty balanced and multiple and looking to, run not just on early downs. I think they're going to be looking to run to convert on third downs as Bill Belichick brings some zone blitz pressure. But specifically, Kadarius Toney, when you look at the matchup with them against the Rams, who has played more slot football this year than he has in his entire career, Jalen Ramsey. And I think we're going to see a lot of Jalen Ramsey going one-on-one against Kadarius Toney. As much as I like Toney, I think he's a real smart a draft for people late in fantasy rounds because he has some real upside as a rookie receiver. That's not a matchup he's going to win consistently. So I think after having a big fantasy day, we could see a quiet day from Kadarius Toney. I like Tony Pollard.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey is not an easy assignment for anybody. Andy, Kadarius Toney or Tony Pollard, PPR?
Yeah, to DJ's point, it's a case where the matchup isn't great. You have people coming back like Shepard. You have Booker back there as well. Now, I was encouraged because it wasn't just this past week where Kadarius Toney popped. The week before, he had 9 targets. That, to me, shows confidence in building him into the lineup. However, that was when all those guys were out. So really, I want to wait and see of how he is used when multiple bodies are back in. Is he pushed to the background? Does he retain a role? Is it somewhere in between? We don't know those answers. Oh, and by the way, you have the Rams defense. So with all that being said, I think the much safer play is Tony Pollard because at least we know how he is being used in that offense. It's not a question mark.
Yeah, it feels like when you put Tony Pollard into your lineup, you can just sort of breathe easy that at least 10 fantasy points seemingly are coming your way, which is helpful depending on what you're looking for. Sometimes there's boom or bust guys that you need to try and win your week, but sometimes you need those guys with a decently high floor, and Tony Pollard certainly falls into that category. I'm not going to say, I don't even know how to pronounce this name. So the question is Zach Moss or Darrell Williams in a half PPR. Moss sort of separating himself a little bit from Devin Singletary in that Bills backfield. And Darrell Williams looks like he will be a beneficiary of the injury to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So Andy, Moss or Darrell Williams?
I'll go with Daryl Williams. Looks like the Chiefs are trying to run the ball a bit more, at least when Edwards-Helaire was in there the last couple of weeks, couple 100-plus yard games. This is Williams' first real shot to star, to be the guy since he's been in the league, right? So while Moss is separating himself, I still like the upside of Williams more as being the guy who probably is going to get that first look and probably going to get it a bit more than maybe Singletary siphoning a few off. I do like how Moss has separated himself, though. But in this case, I'll say Darrell Williams.
DJ.
I agree. This is Williams' first career start, believe it or not. So something he's talked about throughout the week he's super excited about. That offense is going to want to get him off and going and get him in the end zone. There's a bit of a timeshare in both situations, but somewhat differently. In Kansas City, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire down, McKinnon is going to be used solely in passing down situations. Williams is going to be the guy in the red zone. He's going to be the guy on early downs. And with Moss and Singletary in Buffalo, it's a bit more of a balance where you can see both guys in different situations. And again, the leading rusher for the Bills on any given week might be Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And so I actually think when you evaluate that running scheme, it's really a 3-back timeshare, not just a 2-back timeshare. So for those reasons, I like Williams.
Okay, so I just want to stay with that Chiefs backfield for a little bit here. So you mentioned it's Daryl Williams' first start. Say he doesn't do well, okay? And this might be a little bit of a tip or something that fantasy owners can take from us. Marlon Mack's name has been out there on the trade block a little bit. And if you're on top of the waiver wire on Yahoo, you've seen people picking him up and stashing him because there are rumors that the Kansas City Chiefs are looking into him. So, Andy, in terms of just being prudent as a fantasy owner, if you have roster spots available and Daryl Williams today struggles, is Marlon Mack a name that you would maybe pick up and stash and wait until the trade deadline to see if the Chiefs actually do end up making a move for him? Because we know that he can actually do some damage if he gets the touches.
Right. I'm always a fan of if you have a bench spot, pick up a running back over, let's say, a wide receiver. You get wide receivers and relatively competent ones to a certain degree throughout the year. So whenever there's an opportunity to do it, yes. If he goes to the Chiefs, I think he's probably just going to turn it into a full committee schmoz of where it's like, okay, is it Williams? Is it McKinnon?
Right.
Is it Mack?
Right.
So I don't necessarily think there's going to be a huge benefit to it, but you never know when injuries come up. So if there's an opportunity to get one and you don't have to spend too high a waiver priority or fab on it, you might as well and have that extra running back there as a just in case.
DJ, same deal?
Yes, but just temper your expectations, to Andy's point. Listen, for all of those reasons, people were doing backflips to get Lev Bell last year when he became a Kansas City Chief. And he had a couple nice weeks, and by the time they were, going to the postseason, he wasn't, on the active roster. It seems like every other week, earlier in the season, people were looking to get the next person that the Baltimore Ravens had in their building for a workout. Have any of them really made a huge fantasy impact? Not really. Murray maybe, but no one else has consistently. Freeman gets 1 to 2 carries a game, and that's it.
Ugly.
Yep.
So sure, if you've got the room, if you've got the space, but don't think that it's going to be someone who is going to turn things around and win your fantasy league for you. That's not realistic, but could he potentially get you through a scenario later in the year where you got a couple people down because of injury or because you're managing your buys? I think that's possible.
Hashtag league winner. Everyone's trying to find that league winner that'll shine bright later in the season. Okay, another question that I think is a pretty straightforward answer, so just want to get your agreement. Jason on YouTube is asking A.J. Dillon, they are feeding A.J. Dillon. He's doing some damage. Or Darrell or Javonte Williams. So actually it's not as easy as I thought, but A.J. Dillon or Darrell or Javonte Williams. So Andy.
I'm gonna say based on the starter reps, you go with Darrell Williams.
Darrell Williams, yeah.
Yeah, like Javonte, like we talked, great back. Melvin Gordon's there. A.J. Dillon, well, Aaron Jones. Like Dillon's been just annoying enough to be kind of relevant, but more so taking away from Jones. So I think you go with the starter here. Darrell Williams, at least for this week, is going to be the starter and get those touches.
DJ.
Williams. I expect the Washington football team Chiefs game to be high scoring. If you've got skill guys in that game, you want them in your lineup. I like Williams in that spot.
Yeah, the Chiefs seems like a boom spot for the Chiefs. They got to win. A lot of people saying, bad things about their defense and some issues with Patrick Mahomes and that offense, seeing coverages that they haven't seen before, and they're trying to work their way through it. This seems like a spot where the Chiefs just go absolutely ballistic. Spencer on Facebook is asking Tyler Boyd or Jacoby Myers, full PPR league. Tyler Boyd or Jacoby Myers. Donnovan.
I think Boyd's the better player. I think certainly he's an offense that's going to be throwing it early and often. So the fact that it's PPR really, makes me lean to Boyd even more. So is he the number one in that situation? No. But I still think he's a viable target. I like Boyd. To your point, before you go to Andy on the Chiefs, looks like a bounce back situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the numbers that you guys saw. The last I saw was Chiefs 6.5. It's on the road. It's in Washington, but the Washington football team defense is not the defense that we've seen over the last 2 years. Chiefs 6.5. I really, really like that number. The Chiefs are known for not covering, but I see the Chiefs winning by at least a touchdown.
100% agree with you on the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy, Tyler Boyd or Jacoby Myers before we wrap up here?
Yeah, and I'm with you, Deej, on that. Like, not covering is one thing. Beating Washington by a touchdown, that seems pretty safe to me. I like that. I'm going to say Jacoby Myers. And the reason is, although that Patriots offense is really kind of stagnant, not super exciting, Myers is the first look. For Boyd, he's going to be beyond. It's going to be Chase number one, Higgins, and then Boyd. So does Boyd have the talent to go off? Yes. But out of the two, Jacoby Myers is going to be, I believe, that first look for Mac Jones. So I'll go with him as the safer play and the one that should get more opportunity.
Somehow Jacoby Myers just can't find the end zone.
I know.
If he just start getting into the end zone a little bit, then his fantasy stock would skyrocket. Okay, fellas, we're past 12 now, creeping closer to kickoff. Thanks so much, as always, for another great week of Fantasy Start and Sits conversation. If we didn't answer your question, we didn't get to it, as every week until 1 o'clock. Feel free to fire us, or even after 1 o'clock, feel free to fire us on Twitter, any of those questions, and we will do our best to provide the answers. You see our handles there. So thank you again for participating. Thanks for sending in your questions. This has been week 6 of Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook live for Donnovan, Bennett, Andy McNamara. I'm Jesse Rubinoff. We'll see you next week.